everyone, I'm Pam with Betty Jane's, and today we will be finishing our baby quilt. So what we'll be doing today is putting it on the long arm machine. I'll show you how I go about loading my quilts and designs that I pick and how I lay it out. So first of all, this is our backing for the quilt. As I mentioned earlier, it is minky. So my first thing that I do is I line up the edges, fold it in half, find my halfway point, and I put a pin there. And then I go ahead and I do the same thing at the bottom of the piece of fabric. So take my edges, line them up, and halfway point, put a pin in there. So before we go any further, I'd like to introduce you to Lucy. She's my long arm machine. It is an HQ Infinity, and we'll talk a little bit more about her later once we start picking out designs and stuff. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my backing out. I'm going to take that halfway point where I put the pin in, and I like to grab my top header, and I already have a mark on it, a mark halfway. So now I can line up my pin and that mark, and I transfer the pin to hold it on to the leader here. So I am going to pin the whole way across. Since I am using minky, I try my best not to stretch the fabric at all. I try to be very delicate with it. So, pin along. I'm going to keep pinning, and I will see you back when I get to the end. Okay, so now I have my top pinned to the top leader, and as you can see, I have my backing coming out and over the two other poles. So now what I do is I like to come over to this end, and I am going to turn this and load the fabric onto my top leader until I get, just kind of even it out a little bit here. And take it until I'm right about to the end of the other pole. So now I still have my pin in here that I put in earlier at the halfway mark. Again, on my bottom leader, I have a mark halfway. So again, just like I did at the top, I'm going to line that up with my bottom leader and go ahead and pin it. So I have my pins right here. I'm going to go ahead and go across. Again, very careful that I don't stretch that minky. So I'll keep pinning. Okay, so now I have all my pins in on my bottom leader also. So again, I come over here to my wheel, and I am going to start rolling this up. I like to smooth it out as I go along. A little bit harder with the minky. Again, you have to be very delicate. I use my top bar to kind of add some tension to it as it winds on. So I'm going to bring it the whole way down to where my top is right here at the top of my fabric. So now, my next step on the batting, I usually buy my batting by the roll. I have a huge roll of it right here. This is how I buy it. I keep it under my machine, but today, since it's just a baby quilt, I had a small piece already cut, so this is what I'm going to use. So what I do now is just kind of lay this over the top, line it up at the very top. And then I am going to take my quilt top and do the same thing that I did with the backing. So I'm going to fold it in half. Again, mark that halfway point at the top. And again at the bottom. I know there's a lot of different ways for doing all these different ways of putting together a quilt. This is just how I like to do it. I know a lot of people might do it a little differently. This is just what I have found that works for me. So what I'm going to do again is take that halfway mark. I can still see the mark on my top leader. And I am going to just set that pin right below there at the top of the batting. And I am going to lay this kind of across, just try to smooth it out as much as possible. Sometimes it takes you going back and forth a few times. Again, just to make sure that I'm lined up right there. Make sure that my batting is the whole way to the top. My quilt's laying across the top. And now I'm going to get ready to do my basting stitch. So again, into the picture comes Lucy. I have already threaded her with some white thread and a white bobbin. And I also have the Pro Stitcher. So this is Lucy. She's the Handy Quilter Infinity. Gosh, I can't even tell you how many years now that I've had her. Quite a few. About 5, I think. So just love Lucy. We spend a lot of time, a lot of quality time together. So my husband does get jealous of her. No, but really, I spend a lot of time on this machine and really enjoy working with the Handy Quilter. So anyway, back to the machine. What I'm going to do now is a basting stitch. So now I'm going to do my basting stitch. I can lower on the machine. It actually gives me the ability to lower down to a basting stitch. I usually do the basting 1/2 inch. So I'm going to come up here, make sure that I still have that lined up where I needed it to be lined up. Takes quite a few times of smoothing this out and trying to make sure that everything lines up. So I also have channel locks on my machine. So I always like to set my channel locks. Oh look, I didn't have my machine threaded. So let me quickly do this. Okay, so now I'm just going to make sure that my needle goes down in so I can bring up my bobbin thread, just like that. Okay. Sometimes it takes more than once. Okay, seems like my bobbin's a little short here. So now what I'm going to do is kind of peek under here and just make sure that on my bobbin that the thread is out, and pop it right back in here. Okay, now let's try this again and see if this time maybe we're right on. Sure enough, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to kind of lay that out one more time. And now we're just going to go ahead and stitch a basting stitch right across the top, just to kind of hold this down a little bit. I do run along it with my fingers as I'm doing this. Down to the end, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread. My machine automatically cuts the bottom thread, so I just need to go ahead and cut my top thread. So again, I can lay this out. Make sure we're all lined up. I cut this long thread that I had there. And we're going to do the same thing going in the opposite direction. Now I still have my channel locks on. And again, my bobbin. Pull my bobbin out just a little bit. I don't always have this problem. For some reason, today it seems to be wanting to act up a little bit more. Okay, so here we go again. Pull my bobbin thread up. And go ahead and stitch across, guiding it with my fingers. Stop, cut my thread, and then I can go ahead and cut it on the top. So now my next step is going to be, I actually on my machine have these cradles that I can lift my top front loading bar up and into the cradle. So I just move my quilt up here, move the bar up. Excuse me, I'm going to be getting a little close. And now what I can do is pull my quilt back down. It's already sewn at the top. It's basted, so I won't have to worry about it moving around. This is my chance to make sure that everything, I have no bumps or waves. Sometimes you still end up with a little bit of wave in the batting, but as long as on the top part of my quilt, I have everything smoothed out, this is my chance to go ahead and do that. I always do make sure that it's tight and then put my top bar back into place. In doing this, it adds some tension onto that quilt top. Okay, get my bars back in there. So I always do float my quilt tops. I know there's two schools of thoughts here. This, again, just is what works for me. I prefer to go ahead and float them. And this is the way I've been doing it, and it works best for me. So now we're going to go ahead and actually take our channel locks off, and we're going to go ahead and set up our design. So first of all, what I need to do, I'm going to take my stitch length and move it back up to 12, which is normally where I keep it when I'm quilting. I use glide thread, just again, my preference. I worked with a couple different ones, and this is just what works best for me. So on my machine, I'm going to go to design. I have thought about this quilt, and usually what I try to do is look at the quilt, what the design is, what the pattern is, who it's for, and then try to pick out my quilt design with all those things in mind. So today I'm actually going to do something special in the borders. Under my design file, I have Linda Mattiotti, I believe it is. I already have one of her programs in here, and it says Sleep Tight. So that's the one that I am going to use just for the border. So I am going to go ahead and put that up here in my border. And I need to do my area next. My machine will actually go ahead and measure that area. When I do borders, I am going to start at the edge of the top border. So where the seam is, that's what I prefer. And I'm going to go across to the other seam and consider that my area. So let me show you how that's done. I will go to the edge. I come in a little bit from the top, just so I have room for my binding, about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that area. Come the whole way across. So now it will go ahead and give me my area. My area height is 2.94 and my area width is 36.17. So I can go ahead and take my design and skew it into that area. And then I can kind of see how it's laid out. This is very stretched out. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and repeat it twice. I think probably twice is good because this is a very short border. So for the top and the bottom border, I'll go across twice, and then I'll show you how I do the side borders. So right now I'm looking at 2 repetitions. The other thing before I start quilting is I also need to go ahead and add my side clamps. These are my side clamps. Again, we are working with the minky. So I do kind of gather my minky up, try to grab at least a little piece of batting, and then I will re-velcro my edge here. So same thing on the top. And I'm going to do the other side now. All right, one more thing I'd like to do here quickly before we actually go ahead and start quilting the design is to go back to our basting stitch. And I am going to go back to the basting 1/2 inch. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is come down the side here on both sides, because again, we are working with the minky. A lot of people always base the sides, some people don't. kind of depending on the quilt and what I'm actually doing. And for this instance, I'm going to go ahead and base down the side so I don't have a lot of movement on Minky. So, okay, so now I just need to go ahead and bring up my bobbin thread again. There we go. And I've already done my channel lock going straight down. So I am just going to go ahead and stitch on down. I will use my hand to manipulate it a little bit. Okay, again, I'm going to cut the bottom thread and cut my top thread and take off my channel lock. So now I can retighten these. And we're going to come over to the other side and do the same exact thing. Again, cut my bottom thread, cut my top thread, take off my channel lock, make sure this is tight. Okay, now we're ready to quilt. So again, I'm going to take my stitches per inch and go back up to 12. I have my design set up in my area. So now comes the magic. So I just need to go where my little green spot is on my design, which shows the start of the pattern. Okay, so when I'm lined up, I'm going to sink my needle again, pull up my bobbin thread, pull up here onto the top, and now I'm ready to stitch. So I'm going to go ahead, hold on to my 2 threads and hit my run. I want to hit proceed, and it's going to go ahead and do its thing. To get started, I do go ahead and clip off those 2 threads. Go ahead and quilt out the design, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so here we are back again. I finished my border on the top with sleeve tight. I used a white thread on this, as I had mentioned previously. Now I have changed my thread color. I am doing a dark gray, I believe it's called titanium, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and use for the center part of the quilt here. So I have my measurements. Let me see. My area on the inside is going to be 36 wide by 44 long. So now as far as picking my design, I have picked a moon and star with a squiggle. So I am going to go ahead and choose that design. I'm going to open it. And it'll show in my area that I already have set up. So now I just got to figure out how many repetitions I want of this design. So I would like to bring it down and have the first line cover the first 2 rows of the quilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my repeat. I'm going to start with 2 across just to see how that fits. I need to go ahead and skew it in and then go back to my repeat 2, I think maybe 3 might be a little bit better the way I want it to come out. And now for the length, I am going to start adding rows. I do have my needle set up at the bottom of the second row, so I know how much area here I want to cover with one row of the quilting design. So I just need to keep adding rows until my first row of design comes down to right where my needle mark is, which is the orange line going across there. So it looks like 5. 5 for the length, 5 repetitions, and 3 across is what's going to go ahead and work for this quilt. That's what I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with. So again, 3 sequences across and 5 down. Now I have it all set up. What I normally try to do is I have a whiteboard over here, and I like to just jot down the design that I used. And what I also do is I write down how many repetitions, both horizontal and vertical. So that's just for my own reference. In case anything should go astray, I kind of know what my pattern was. So we're ready to go ahead and start quilting this. So just like I did before, I'm going to come back over to the little green mark that shows on my design. I'm going to line up my needle with that. And I am going to go ahead and sink my needle down in, get my bobbin thread, pull that up. And now we're going to go ahead and quilt our first row. So I'm going to get the machine set up and we'll see how it goes. All right, so now our quilt is finished quilting. I'm going to go ahead and take my clamps off and take it off the machine, and we'll see what it turned out like. Of course, with this one having minking on the back, it did give me some problems. As I said, it usually does. Not really a surprise. It's like an ongoing struggle, but I still like to not shy away from it because I think it makes a really nice backing to, especially to a baby quilt. So I try not to be too afraid. All right, let's get the rest of these pins out. Okay. So here we go. There's the finished quilt top. Now I'm going to flip it over for you so you can see the back. Like I said, I did a moon and a star. It really does show up on the Minky very well. I did this sleep tight, both on the top and the bottom. I did have to take the quilt off and turn it. So I did take it off, repinned it, just like I had shown you in the beginning, and did my other 2 sides of the board. So now I will square it up, trim off my excess, I'm sorry, and I am going to finish it off with a black flannel binding. So, and it'll be ready to ship out to that cute little baby boy. So thank you again for joining me. It was a great afternoon. I loved spending it with you. And give me a thumbs up if you liked it, a thumbs down if you think I messed up or there were some problems. And please subscribe so at least you know when my next video is coming up. So have a great day, guys.